Hello. How are you all doing? You all right? Okay, so I just want to say a couple of things before I start talking. You know, a lot of you, and I'm presuming a lot of you are here for the right reason, but please do not be here and go, day off school, happy days. Whatever it is, I get a day off school. Listen to what's being said here. Because when I was 15 years of age, I would have went on my hands and knees for my school to do something like this, but they never did. And no school in Ireland ever did. 15, 16, 17 years ago, we didn't mention this. It wasn't mentioned. Mental health, your mind, suicide, words like this were not in the Irish psyche. We didn't speak about it. We didn't even mention it at home. Now we're in a big building in the middle of Dublin with 5,000 pupils. That's progress. But the one thing I will say is, please listen to what we say. I know it's a bit of crack and you're having a bit of fun and you're getting off school, but there's a real reason we do this, and the reason Jim started this. It isn't for people to take days off school. It's to save people's lives. That's the pure fact of what the reason people like Conor Cusack, people like Jim Breen do what they do. They don't do it for slaps on the back, they do it to save lives. So just remember that. Quickly, I know you're all going now. And if some of you are going, I want to save lives and help people, but I'd love a day off school as well, that's grand too. I was going to tell my story, but a lot of people know it. And if you haven't heard my story, I'd push you towards a speech that I did at Love in Dublin about 6 weeks ago. And I basically went through how mental health has affected me throughout my life. And it's a good starting point for you to watch. Some of you might have seen it, some of you may not have, but I'd advise you to watch it. But rather than come up here this morning, and speak about my journey again, I'm not going to do that. But I will tell you, since I was 15 years of age, I've lived with what is known as generalized anxiety disorder. And you've all felt that. You've all felt anxiety in your life. You know what it is. Before exams. Some of you mightn't have anxiety issues, but before exams you get that horrible feeling in your stomach. You can't catch your breath, you can't sleep. Totally normal. Everybody gets it. It's the most basic human instinct in the world. It's the fight or flight instinct. We all have it. If we didn't have it, we'd all be dead. But mine doesn't work properly. So I have a generalized anxiety disorder. So I mean that feeling that you get in your stomach before an exam. I have that 24/7. I have that when I lie in my bed at night. Every single night, still to this day, although I deal with it, I choke for 10 or 15 minutes before I sleep. I can't catch my breath, but it's normal to me. I've learned to deal with it. So throughout my journey, I started then dealing with what was further diagnosed as clinical depression. And some people ask me what depression is. How do you know if you're depressed? You'll just know. There's no questioning it. It's not one of those things going, I think I might be. Being low, everybody on this planet is low at some stage in their life. Everybody goes through it. Once again, a very normal human instinct. But feeling so low that you've got no empathy towards those you love, feeling so low that you cannot get out of bed, feeling so low that you can't look your loved ones in the eye, then you're kind of getting to a point of what depression can feel like. But the good news with depression is, as difficult as it is, and as let's be honest, compoundingly difficult it can be, it is dealable with. So you often, people like me coming up and doing talks like this, and we say, listen, if you talk, everything will be all right. It will be better, but you still have to learn to deal with these things. You don't talk and it disappears. What talking does, and here's what it allows you to seek help in a much more proactive way. Once you speak, and people around you are aware what you're going through. So for example, with me, I could be, in a pub with a friend, and something would come over me, and I just leave. And he'd go, Bressie's an ignorant prick. He just left. He didn't even say goodbye. And then I go home and I'd start feeling guilty about that, and I'm like, geez, I should have said goodbye. But I'm kind of more worried about the fact that I can't breathe. I'm having a panic attack. So once I made everyone around me aware that I am an ignorant prick, that this is something that I live with, and this is something that I deal with, it became so much easier to me. It was like a weight off my shoulders. It became so easy. to actually seek help. And talking's one thing, but real help, like talking to people, helpful help. I know that sounds ridiculous. Some people, if you have friends that go, listen, you can talk to me, that's brilliant. Because I didn't have that. But the one thing I will say, and the one thing I want to do with my talk here is to let you know, number one, obviously, this is a very normal thing. You would not believe, since I've come out publicly, I mean, when I come out, I'm just one of those types of guys who doesn't do things in half measures. I shouted it from the rooftops. I've been restrained for so long. I've been quiet and I disguised it for too long, and I realized the biggest regret in my life, and I've done lots and lots of stupid things in my life, like in kind of like every teenager, like every adult does. We all mess up. We do stupid things we don't mean. But my only regret, because I've learned from every mistake, my only regret was waiting too long before I spoke to my parents. That's where my regret comes, because their comforts, them knowing what I was going through, is essentially what opened all the doors for me. And then my friends, doors opened even more. And then the public, because like it or lump it, part of my job is I'm in the public eye. You're on television, you're on radio, you're whatever. So my biggest fear was, what if I had a panic attack on live television? What if I started shaking? And one of those panic attacks that I know that I can have, that literally take the life out of your body. They suck every inch of energy you have out, and they leave you for dead. And I said, what if that happens on television? The Irish public, the vast majority of the Irish public would watch The Voice and they would go, Jesus, Bressie's mad. That's what we would have thought, because we don't understand what this is. And I promised myself that I can't let that happen, because all I'd be doing at that point is compounding the stigma that's already there. So I felt, what was the best thing I could do in this situation? And the answer was, shout it from the rooftops. Who cares? If I lose my job, these things were going on in my head. If I lose my job, if people start judging me, so be it. It's the lesser of two evils. And the irony was, it was the total opposite. When I spoke, the empathy of the public, the empathy of friends, the empathy of peers and colleagues was just incredible. And it allowed me to do some incredible things. But what I'm going to point out here is, rather than go on and tell you how hard it can be and how difficult it can be to deal with, I'm going to give you little ways of dealing with it, little tips that you can try. And I ask every single person, including the teachers, to try this just for 10 days. For 10 days, I ask you to do some things for me. If you don't want to do it, obviously we can't make it, I can't make it, but I'd strongly advise that you give this a shot. There's a movement called positive psychology. And the one thing I will say, the one term that kind of gets me sometimes is positive mental health. And I understand why it's there. But if you're acutely depressed or you're having an acute anxiety phase, it's impossible to be positive. And I'm telling you that. What you do is you let it happen. You let it come over you, and you keep telling yourself, this will pass. This will pass. It's like a flu. A flu is the most, and I'm not talking man flu, I'm talking proper flu. Proper, I can't move my head flu. All you're thinking in your head is, I want to die. This is the worst sickness. I am dying. And you're not. You have a flu. But what gets you through the flu is knowing, I know when the antibiotics kick in and the painkillers kick in, I'll start feeling a bit better in a day or two. I'll be grand. Think about that when you feel low. Think about that idea. It will pass. It always passes. That's positive. That's positive. Knowing that you will always recover is positive. I don't expect you, if you're having a really tough couple of days, to go, think about the starving kids in Africa. Think about others. Don't think about them. Don't think of that. Don't bring perspective into it. Let it happen, because the guilt that goes on top of that can be worse. So here's the tips I'm going to say to you. And it's like going to the gym for your mind. The irony of this is that we, in this country, spend so much money on irrelevant things, really irrelevant things, yet we don't invest in our minds. So no matter how academic you are, no matter how good your academic achievements are, no matter how good you are in a sporting field, I am proven proof that they all mean nothing. I wasn't very academic. That makes no sense. But they don't mean anything if your mind isn't in the right place. Yet we don't spend any time. And that brings me to one of my next points. Before I give you these tips, recently we have witnessed the power of people in this country. We had a water charge. I'm not going to get political, but people got up and marched because they didn't want it to happen, which proves that although the government run this country, the people have the power. And why I'm saying that is, until this happens, I'm not going to stop. And the likes of Jim Breen's not going to stop. And the likes of Conor Cusack isn't going to stop. Until this wellness, emotional well-being, all these things we associate with positive mental health are brought into the educational curriculum, we will not stop. All these subjects you do in school are pointless unless your head and your mind is able to cope. Do you know what they call you guys? This is brilliant. Do you know what they call every one of you? They call you generation anxiety. Because they're saying they're being given so much to deal with. You know, you have this bullshit like Made in Chelsea, and they're telling you this is real. It's not real. These things aren't real, but they're shoved down our throats. All these programs, they're not real, yet they're shoved down our throats. Technology, as brilliant as it is, can be very difficult to cope with sometimes. So they assume that our teenagers are going to grow into adults with serious problems because they do not know how to cope. The reality is, you're the total opposite. You've adults who've already made that mistake, like me, willing to carve the way for ye to be okay about speaking. But more importantly, learning coping mechanisms to deal with what this is called generation anxiety. I don't believe it. I actually believe it's the total opposite with the teenagers. I believe they have a sincere power. You have a power to tell your teachers, to the education system, that you want this on the curriculum. And not in a kind of, we'll do it half an hour a week. I mean in a real way, an incentivized way, a way that you can actually get points in your leaving cert. This is what we got to do with this. This is the biggest epidemic. But we really have a chance here, and that's the fact. So the point is, I'm going to give you some coping mechanisms that I want you to try for 10 days. That's it. Do it, don't do it. But I really, really, really hope, I have 1 minute to speak. Jesus, was I up that long? Here's your coping mechanisms. Positive psychology. Stop judging others. No matter what you think about them, do not judge them. Judging others has profound negative impact on your brain. It makes you feel bad. I've never judged someone in my life and felt good about it. It shoves this cortisol, this stress hormone through your body and makes you feel bad. So stop judging others, especially when you do not know anything about their situation. Have a little bit of compassion for yourselves. Self-compassion is the key, one of the keys to happiness. We're so hard on ourselves. We do bad things, we absolutely badger ourselves for it. But then when we do good things, we don't celebrate that. That is not right. It's not good. If you can't have compassion for yourself, you cannot have compassion for others. That is a huge thing to do if you're struggling a little with mood and a little with anxiety. Make sure you practice that. And I mean this every day. Do one thing to congratulate yourself every bloody day. Do one every time you feel you're going to judge someone, even if they're on television and you feel that they deserve it. Don't. Step back. The third thing I'm going to say is gratitude. I know this all sounds like, oh, whatever. Gratitude. Being thankful for what you do have can have a huge impact on your brain. Scientifically can have an impact on your brain, can make you feel better. So here's one thing I want you to try. The 30 thank you. When you wake up in the morning, before your feet hit the ground, I want you to say 30 things that you're thankful for. That can be as simple as toothpaste. It can be as simple as the milk that I'm going to put in my tea when I go downstairs. It doesn't have to be profound, life-changing things. 30 things that you are thankful for before your feet get out of the bed. And you will start the day with a positive frame of mind. So these are 3 simple things. And the last thing I'll leave you with, there's an amazing app out there. And I know everyone has a smartphone at this point. And I mean, I've seen some people's smartphones, and it's just full of stuff that, games, all this kind of stuff. If you want to use a smartphone and you want to be part of this generation of technology, download an app called Headspace. I've got nothing to do with it. This isn't me promoting it. It is the single greatest app I've ever put in my phone. And it brings you through mindfulness in a really easy, simple way. You do not have to be a Buddha to do it. It's really simple. So everyone in this room, when you go home tonight, I think it's like 99 cents. Download Headspace and do it for 10 days And if it doesn't have a positive impact on you, I'll eat my shoes. Fact. So positive psychology. Those are the 4 things before we move on. Self-compassion. Stop judging others. We all do it, and it's okay to do it sometimes, but when you're doing it, step back. Go, right, no, I'm not doing that. It doesn't make me feel good. It won't make you feel good. It'll make you worse. And gratitude. Be thankful for what you do have. Simple things. And I guarantee it, it'll be the beginning of a journey to help you start dealing and learning coping mechanisms. So we can stop, and I can stop listening to people call the teenagers of this country generation anxiety. Don't grow into adults who have no coping mechanisms. Prove everybody wrong. Because technology is going nowhere. Embrace it, but learn to deal with it and cope. Thanks a million.